2016 PRAC to order. Call roll. Start over here to my right.
Here.
Just state your name for the audience.
Doug Neely here.
Mike Mitchell.
Roger Falatice.
I'm Joyce Gifford, Vice Chair, serving as Chair for this meeting tonight. We'll begin with approval of the minutes from June 30th. You guys had a chance to review those?
Move to approve.
Moved by Neely, seconded by Mitchell. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passed unanimously. Do we have any citizens' comments for items not on the agenda? We do have citizens in the audience. Thank you for being with us tonight, but they're just here to watch, so we have no comments. So we're moving right along.
Of course,
Mr. Lewis.
We might mention, if I might, we might mention to them that we have an opening on the PRAC if they're interested in the PRAC.
Oh, yes, we do have an opening on the PRAC due to a medical thing that somebody had to terminate early. And we will be having interviews for that. Did we get some applications?
That is on our agenda tonight.
Okay, we'll be talking about that. Mr. Lewis, John Lewis, our Public Works Director, has something for us.
So your audience members are Mr. and Mrs. Harper who live at 801 Brighton, and I'm here to talk a little bit about 801 Brighton as it relates to your Oregon City Trails.
Is that 801 Brighton?
801 Brighton.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
As it relates to the Oregon City Trails Master Plan. And this topic was suggested that we bring it to the PRAC. And so, Denise, I don't know, can you get that thing going for me while I'm rambling here? Oh, sorry. Let me log in and do my.
Top secret here.
Actually, can I sit here?
Yeah, you can sit there. The mic's on. This one here. That mic's on. Good to go.
We like glossy photographs. Thank you.
Well, I thought about trying to do I didn't do a PowerPoint, but I've got a variety of PDFs that I've put together, most of which have been presented to the City Commission. So the reason why we're talking about 801 Brighton is because there is right-of-way on both sides or on two sides of this property, McKinley Avenue and Promontory. So the property that I'm talking about is right here. And it's a residential property. It fronts two essentially unimproved right-of-ways, and their property line is such that most of their backyard is actually in the public right-of-way. So that came up as an issue because they came to us with a request for a permit to place a fence, and so staff thought, it's pretty similar to what we have in other properties along these rights of ways, in fact, and similar rights of ways. So, but we realized we in order to approve it, we would have to issue a permit, a revocable right-of-way permit is what we were suggesting, and we took it before the City Commission, and we got a little pushback from the City Commission, and that pushback came in the form of a suggestion that instead of a revocable right-of-way permit, that we should vacate the right-of-way, and that way the property would then, that portion of that right-of-way would become the property of the owners of 801 Brighton and would be taxable, right? That was the idea at the time. And I wasn't expecting that kind of pushback and that kind of suggestion, to tell you the truth. And we thought that there was, we don't have utilities in that area, but it just seems like one of those right-of-way sections that it would be, I didn't think it was responsible to vacate. And so, but we didn't have an argument there. We just kind of took that and said, we'll consider it and we'll bring it back to you. So we brought it back, or we considered it first and talked about it a fair amount and decided, yeah, we don't have utilities there, but it's a meaningful right-of-way. And, for emergency access, for me, it was the idea of a possibility of a trail, although at that time I didn't realize that there was a trail plan that had this trail listed. I'd never, as familiar as I am, as you know, with Waterboard Park, I had no idea that there was a plan for a trail along that upper promontory right away. So let's see if I can.
Is that trail noted on this map?
No, it's not. It's actually not noted on this map, but I will get to a map that will note that. So just give me a chance to kind of go through. The Harpers were interested in basically replacing an existing fence that had fallen over after years of deterioration, right? It was a wooden fence, and there's another side story that I'm not sure we need to get into, but you may want to. I suppose Mr. Harper may want to. But they started the idea of putting in a more significant wall, or fence, which was CMU block wall with foundation on it, and they essentially had to. We told them that they couldn't do that, and they needed to remove that. So they went through that process of halfway building a wall, taking it down, and now the status of the property is there's no fence there at all. The idea is they'd like to get the fence put back so that they can continue to have what they've always had in terms of their backyard.
And so that fence is the yellow line there?
So they have fences along McKinley, a fence along Promontory, and the fence along McKinley Avenue is still there. It's not changed. It's the one along the Promontory that.
So the one that shows up in red is what's been removed, or what?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. This is so. I'll go through several details, but that's pretty much it in a nutshell. We have really, and actually the city commissions approved a resolution that authorizes staff to issue a permit, a revocable permit, to the Harper and to their, that would run with their property, that would allow the encroachment of, the fence. The yard is there and been there, and everything that we can tell, it's been there for a minimum of 40 years, right? 50 years. So I'm going to show you some pictures, talk a little bit about it, and really kind of talk about why I'm here. That's the other little piece too. So the left picture, the kind of yellowing lawn is what was on the what has always been on the outside of the fence. Really ran along the bark dust there, and that yellowed lawn. That's where the fence was at before. And so you can see their mature landscaping there has been there for many, many years. And they've been good stewards of that edge. They've kept that grass area mowed and cut back from the blackberries. So pedestrian activity, while it's not well known, people do from time to time want to walk
I've
along
hiked
that
it
edge.
many times.
You've probably hiked it many times, right? I've been on it once or twice. The other picture is, again, in their rear yard. It's really kind of looking along the McKinley fence line, looking out towards Waterboard Park.
Which one are we talking about?
Top right.
Okay.
The top, so not only is there a fence there, there's a significant hedge there. And then the top, or the bottom left, is kind of, I just turned around 180 degrees and I'm taking a picture along that McKinley Avenue fence line again, looking out towards Brighton Street. And again,
so that gate is on Brighton?
Yeah, actually most of that is in the public right-of-way of Brighton, of McKinley. But we're looking at Brighton several, so the next picture is standing closer to Brighton looking back at that gate. So I'm really just kind of showcasing
all right,
that.
got it.
We've got lots of long time established stuff, landscaping, landscaping that has always been a part of this property. In fact, their driveway access that's a city vehicle parked there, but that driveway access pretty much comes off of, kind of feels like you're coming off of Brighton, but in reality it comes off of McKinley. And then, of course, the only main utility that we have is those power lines that you're looking at that are overhead on that bottom right picture are, our Power Friends, PGE, and they they pretty much run down the McKinley right away, more along the edge of that right away. So if you kind of look at those power lines, they're closer to the real location of that property line than the fence line is. It's well off that. My suspicion is that this property developed this way when it was first built. Okay.
And what year was that?
Thank you. 1967. I've got, well, no, I don't have a slide in this PowerPoint of the details of that, but it sounds like around that time.
So,
House was completed in 68.
it looks like you wouldn't really be able to access that right of way off of McKinley with a fence there. Is that true, or is there a way around it?
Wouldn't be able to, now, who do you mean wouldn't be able to access the fence?
McKinley, that fence you say is actually within the right of way?
Yes.
So a person that wanted to walk on that area
Right.
would not really be able to access it off McKinley the way it's set up?
Actually, the fence that I don't have
Does it run down
pictures
the
to
middle
show
of the
on the
right of
other
way?
side of the fence, but on the other side of the fence there's a long driveway. It's like a flag lot, only it uses McKinley to get to a residence that sits in the top left picture. It's on the other side of those power poles over there.
Okay.
So you can follow down this walkway and go around the edge of the fence
Okay.
and back.
So there is
that's-
access to it then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excuse me, John, I have a picture of it.
You have a picture of it?
That bottom picture.
Okay, great. Yeah. That bottom picture reflects the other side of the fence.
But that's on McKinley, not on
Yeah.
Promontory. Okay.
So this is yet another series of pictures, and pictures do justice to this. So this is a 2001 photo, and this is a 2015 photo. That was the best I could come up with historic photos, and but this is where the fence line is in 2001, and the fence line here as well. They're established fence lines for all these years, and that again, that driveway comes off of Brighton right away and moves on to McKinley right away, and then comes back into their house. And then that walkway, Doug, that you were asking about, you could walk down along the bluff side of that fence, come around this corner, and walk right out onto McKinley there. So this isn't a question of shutting off the access any more than it has in the past.
Okay.
Okay. And then this just shows the more recent picture with, again, the same fence, more landscaping than was there in 2001, at least in this area. And this, it's kind of hard to tell just the color of these photos. Obviously, our new photos are much more vibrant, so they tell a little better picture. But there's that fence line as well. And that was in 2015. I'm not going to expect you to read this. I just wanted you to know that we've been in front of the City Commission twice on this, and the last time they approved the resolution, which it's got several whereases, which basically says they've encroached and it's there, but we're going to go ahead and issue a revocable obstruction in the right-of-way permit for the placement and maintenance of the fence. So that's what we need to do. We've actually yet to issue a permit for that, but we need to when I would have liked to have issued it before now, but my workload and this meeting kind of just have prevented that from actually happening. But that's the direction that we've got, and that's where we're going to move to. Seem to have put these. Did I lose? I sure did. So somehow I didn't incorporate the map that Denise has prepared for you. So there's a map of the from the Oregon City Trails Master Plan.
Oh, the
And
trails map? Okay.
The trails map, and I wanted to show that in a larger scale, and somehow I lost that slide. But so one of the big dilemmas was in the conversation with the City Commission. I said, this location doesn't show up on our trails plan, and that's true for the transportation system plan, which is the plan I'm most familiar with. To be honest with you, I hadn't spent much time looking. In fact, I'd forgotten it existed, was this Oregon City Trails plan. And so I was pretty quickly corrected by a member of the McLaughlin neighborhood who said, John's not being truthful about this. And that was a misstatement on my part. I hope you guys know me well enough to know I would not misguide you knowingly, but or the commission for that matter. So I've had to do a little backpedaling on that, and because in fact there is a trail, it's at a very small scale, but there is an intent to build what they call the Rim Trail along that stretch of right of way, and so that's having made that misstatement, I think that's what spurred this idea of, well, you should bring that before the PRAC. And so here I am letting you know that I'm not trying to misguide anybody. I didn't really know it existed. The good news is I've learned a couple of things about this plan, and just kind of dovetailing that with some of our other transportation needs. We've done a good job as a community aspiring for better connectivity of trails, bike lanes, better driving solutions, all those things. Between our TSP and now understanding this list, it's aspiration. These are aspirational goals to get to. Trying to figure out how to fund them is a challenge that I'm really struggling with, on a daily basis, to figure out how to set the SDCs right and how to get the right grant applications for these projects and those kind of things. And you folks are probably more familiar with that because Parks is the least funded program in most of our, quote, utility kinds of things, right? And so you're trying to build a couple of parks, and that's going to consume most of the funding, as I know it, from any SDCs or any other park revenues that might be available out there. So when I saw this list, I went, wow, there's a lot of things on this list. I like the idea of having, and it was good for me to know that there was a trail plan for that particular right-of-way, but it's definitely out there a ways. So to me, when I looked at it, I again thought, we're talking about a revocable right-of-way permit in an area where there is pedestrian access if needed, although it's on lawn areas, and I would say we've got a lot of encroachments in that area, some of which are more easily crossed than others, but they're still public right-of-way for people to access, and so some people do. Obviously Joyce has been on it. I bet you Doug's probably been on it too, once or twice. But so I at this point we've got good direction from the City Commission. We're not asking you for permission, but we're wanting to give you an update, and we're wanting to hear your concerns, frustrations, comments.
So just for clarification, the fence is not on their property, correct?
Right.
But it's been there for years.
Yeah.
And so it's not blocking access to that trail. It's revocable. I mean, if someday there's a huge path that we want to build through there, we could ask them to take down the fence.
Right.
So what are we actually permitting them to do?
Well, I guess what City Commission had asked is, why don't we permanently vacate it so that we can be collecting taxes on that property?
It was a comment that was made by one of the commissioners, and we looked at it and we took it back and let them know why that wasn't a good idea, and they agreed
you'd have
with
to do that with everybody in that area, it would seem like, because if you're gonna vacate one little section, you'd need to vacate a larger.
Some people made that argument about this revocable permit too. We don't have the ability to deal with all our right-of-way encroachments. That's a pretty tall order, and there's a lot of them, and some of them are long-standing. So it's one of those things that I think we deal with on a, when somebody comes to us and said they want to do something in there, that's different than somebody who has had a long-standing facility there or improvement there that, we're just not going to go act. It's kind of like code enforcement. It's more like report-driven than it is actively going out and reviewing all of our right-of-ways. Now, we could get there, I guess, if that was a policy direction, but it would take some staff time to do that.
This sounds like almost like what do you call a gentleman's agreement. What's the protection for you folks? If so, we say, yeah, you can, the city says you can do that, and then, a year later, someone's come and say, take down the fence.
It's possible, and that's kind of the risk. But at the same time, my sense is if we put a trail up there, we're not going to put a trail that's going to do more than maybe suggest we change that fence alignment such that it backs away from the area. Maybe we want something meandering. It may be that I don't know what the design would look like.
Let me interject really quick. On our master plan, this concept trail currently isn't a trail, it's just right of way. So this concept trail is the 25 plus year projection.
Mm-hmm.
So there's tiers to our levels of concept trails that we want to get to. And this is a local trail. So on the levels, it's a tier 3, which is in the 25 plus year program. We haven't done tier 1 in the local trails yet.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't done tier 2 in our local trails yet. So as far as funding to get to tier 3 trails, I think we're still projecting out
Long shot.
long term. So just so you guys have an idea of concept of where this lies in our trail master plan.
I mean, for myself, I agree with the city, give them the permit, but I'm just thinking of you folks that,
The other concern that we've heard is just like adverse, not condemnation, possession, where, that can happen between property owners where somebody builds their fence 7 feet onto their neighbor's property and it sits that way for several years. That in court has proven to be a way that then they can essentially lose that land. That can't happen with a public agency, is what we heard from our attorney. So, yeah, we're issuing a permit, making it very, very clear that if the time comes that we need to get something through there, like a pathway, we can revoke that permit.
Right now, though, that even if the fence was rebuilt along the previous fence line, there is still ability to walk between the fence and the park.
That's right.
I mean, so
Safely.
It's just but the wall that they were hoping to build didn't fit any of the fence codes, did they, in Oregon City? So the fence that's planned
Wooden fence. I think
apply.
we talked like a 4 foot tall fence.
Is applicable with the rest of the fence codes. I know that we don't allow that chain link fences anymore, but this is not a
proposing
chain
anything
link
like
fence.
that. I mean, they want it to be a nice facility just like they had before.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
so the entrance to this possible trail is that is overlook. What's that? What's the name of that overlook? There is a name for that, where you can,
Creed Street.
No, I mean, but somebody called it a name once. But when I was at a meeting I went to, and at one of the city commission meetings, where you can see the whole city from that point.
Sorry.
Promontory.
Is that what it was? Oh,
Viewpoint.
they had another name for it, but
Viewpoint. It's right here.
There's the overlook.
There's I always call it.
Okay, just the overlook. That's what it's called then.
Or Promontory Point.
Okay, so actually
Makeout point, isn't
a
it?
trail existing right now that's being used. So
Well-
that would be part of the Rim Trail already, wouldn't it?
No, the trail that's there is the old. I guess it's roadway that used to go through Waterboard Park. That's the trail.
No, not going through Waterboard.
Okay.
Okay, the overlook.
Hmm.
Okay, going east from there.
Oh, right. There is
Yeah,
a trail that
yeah.
goes actually.
It's even
yes.
marked. There's
Yes.
markers on
Yep.
it.
Right.
Right.
Now, how
But
does
this
that
is
work with
west.
those property owners? How far does the city, right away go on that?
So most of that trail is in a city platted right of way, and I would say almost all of those property owners encroach with landscaping. There's not, I don't recall much for fences until you get kind of
There
down
aren't any.
the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There
So-
aren't any.
That's
I mean, I've walked that a lot, and so that trail has been there for. I've lived here for 24 years, going on 25, and that's been there, and so there's little markers on that, and so because I've always often wondered, okay, I'm in this person's backyard here.
Yeah.
But, so I was just curious if, that's in the same situation, and would all those people be allowed to do the same thing then? Or,
I think we would struggle with a new fence like that. This gives us, it is our right of way. It gives us the opportunity to say yes or no. And so, I think if there's not an existing fence there, and somebody was proposing a new fence that's not on their property but in our public right of way, we would have the opportunity to say yes or no.
Probably
And
block their view.
my sense is based on the use of that pathway, we would say no.
okay. Why couldn't they just have a hedge, a small, like you would for a front yard? You're allowed 4 feet.
I think they could, as long as it was. I mean, most of these property owners do landscaping out there, so they, again, if they came to us and said, "Hey, we want to put in a hedge, but we don't want to put it on our property line. We want to put it out along the edge of the trail," we'd have to consider that and whether we would and talk about it. And we'd probably take that to the city commission and ask them to give permission for a right-of-way permit or a revocable, encroachment permit.
Interesting.
So the city commission has already acted on this, right?
That's right.
Okay, and you're looping back because of the confusion over whether or not it was part of the trail plan.
Yeah, I felt bad about making
Yeah.
that
Okay.
comment,
Okay.
and it was suggested by the commission to do that, and then I think the folks that spoke at the public hearings recommended that, so we said we would.
I guess
No.
my only concern, and it's going to sound like splitting hairs probably, but especially, okay, so let's say it is 25 years from now and we get the money. It seems to me like by saying it's a permanent easement that we've kind of set a higher bar for deciding to revoke it. Where if it had been a temporary easement, then there's not any question that it could be revoked easily. But I'm splitting hairs at this point since it's already done. The thing that's more concerning to me, and Denise and I talked about this at the boat ramp open house, is the now the word just went. Thank you. The precedent that this sets in both directions. And Denise brought part of this up. I'm concerned that now we've told other people by the fact that we're allowing a fence here that they can do the same thing. And if not, why can't I? And then the other side of that you were talking about is we do know that there's all these other encroachments. So if we don't allow this one, how can we justify that we didn't allow it because we're letting all these other people get away with it? I'm worried more about the precedent than I am this actual encroachment. To Joyce's comment or Roger's about you can use that path now. It almost makes it more clear that it's a usable path for somebody who gets up there. If there is a fence or a hedge or whatever, they know on the outside of that. No, I'm not in their backyard. So, I worry about the precedent.
And we
What
talked to
might
our
happen.
attorney a little bit about that. He wasn't so worried about it, and he thought the fact that we were even having this public conversation about it, and the fact that we can incorporate real clearly into the permit how revocable that is, they don't see it as a
And not
problem.
only revocable, it's replacing a fence that was there
That's right.
before you
Right.
bought the place.
Yeah.
So I understand about giving revocable permits to replace fences that are already existing. The problem would be if somebody wanted to put up a new fence
Right.
in the public right of way, and then we'd say, no, back it up. So, go ahead, Doug.
I'm just going to comment in a more general fashion here. Person buys a house, probably it's indicated there there's an easement or something, but it's not really called to their attention. I would like all the property owners that are on that to recognize where that easement is, so that they know the limitations now. I know it's probably in a title somewhere but oftentimes those things aren't necessarily revealed to you when you actually buy a piece of property. We had the one incident where somebody bought a piece of property on Cascade, and they did not know their property extended onto the slope of a apartment complex where people throw out everything over the edge of the cliff there, and all that garbage is on their property. And they weren't even aware they got that piece of property when they bought the
And
land.
it's their responsibility to clean it up.
And it ends up their responsibility to clean it up, even though they're not responsible for the garbage. It would be nice if we could actually indicate to those property owners where that boundary is, so that in the future, if the question comes up, there's no doubt in their minds.
So,
And I'm not talking about
and
them, of
I
course,
don't-
they
I
are
don't know if
aware of
the,
it.
I don't know if the Harper. I'm pretty sure even the Harpers got notice, but over the last, I would say, 24 months, there's some encroachments on the other end of Promontory that are pretty significant, and we actually had a rock fall down onto that pathway that you're talking about, a big boulder, and we think that was due to some of their grading up in that area of what is the right of way. So we did I can't remember if Denise was on that walk, but we did it with code enforcement. We all kind of gathered up there and walked along that bluff and realized that we had, a lot of these encroachments, but most of them were long-standing. A few were, taking liberties, though, recent liberties. So we put a pretty big effort at that time to notify them. And at some point, we were even marking using these plastic kind of like edge markers that you see on roadways, reflective markers, and had some stickers placed on them, I thought, that was just letting those folks know really where their property line was. Because a lot of them don't have, in the Harper's case, there's maybe 5 feet between the back of the house and their edge of their property. So it's... Right. So we have been making some strides there, Doug, already.
Okay, good.
But probably good reminder to do that again.
So that's city property, that's not park property.
It's public right of way, so it's not park property.
Okay.
It abuts the park.
Well, it seems to me the cost and the risk is on the property owner. As long as it isn't, you're not putting down an asphalt, something permanent and would be really hard to remove. I don't see the problem.
Is anybody else, okay, it seems like as long as everybody's aware that is, that could be a trail and people will be walking there. I think the one I'm talking about earlier is used a lot. Mm-hmm. You can tell it's used. And it's actually connected to Singer Creek Park. Mm-hmm. And I know that since there's a grant that's trying to get the road, the park, Waterboard Park cleaned up, and the road later on, do something with the road to help for more traffic going up there. And this trail would allow access all the way to, the new trail that's proposed from the mill to connect up. So as long as that is accessible for a trail later on,
all those property owners, if they're not aware, they're, I think they've missed an opportunity to be aware. But you're right. It's not a trail like the other side where there's a worn path even, right? It feels very much like you're walking in people's backyards, and they may not know that the trails master plan exists that shows a project, or they may and not think it's ever going to come to fruition. Who knows? I don't know, but I think that's the good thing is we have a plan for it, and if we can fund it, I think there's no question about whether or not we can put it there or not. City's got the right to do that.
Does that right-of-way extend beyond McKinley, or is that a dead end on the right-of-way?
That's it, right there. It
Okay.
comes out on McKinley, and then that's the end of it.
John, is it that PrAC needs to take, or is this for information only?
It's informational.
Okay. Anybody
That
have any further questions?
you're here. I don't know if you want to. Did you want to say anything?
Mostly you covered, although it did come as a surprise to us. We thought that the fence, behind the fence, was Promontory Road. We never knew anything about the property that was inside the fence.
Is it an unfortunate
Can we,
circumstance?
Yeah,
can we get you guys
come-
to speak into the
Please come
mic?
Thank you.
Basically, the other viewers will have like dead silence. Are those red lights on?
Wesley Harper, resident of Oregon City.
And Virginia Harbor, the same.
The circumstances of our buying the property were a little unusual in that the former owner, the seller, had not lived there for 4 years. She was in her 80s, and she lived in a home up in northern Washington, and all her family lived down in Los Angeles. So the only contact we had was with the selling real estate agent and the listing real estate agent, and our real estate agent did tell us about the McKinley right away, but didn't say anything about the promontory. And so we, sort of, I guess, weren't sharp enough to realize
To
that
measure it.
just because there was a fence there didn't mean that
That was
was
your property
part
line.
of the property. So we had no idea that anything was amiss until we erected that concrete block fence. And even then, we asked, "Is this okay?" And the person we talked to, probably wasn't thinking in his head, "Oh, this is public right of way." So he said, "As long as it's no higher than 42
Gave us the
inches,
measurements.
you're fine." And so,
So we went ahead and had it put in.
yeah, so
So they were finished with it except for facing it with stone, and then we had to take it out. It was concrete, filled with concrete and rebar. So it would have been sturdy. So
Okay, well, appreciate your time and
Thank you.
consideration, and
I think this probably brings up something we ought to take a look at, the trails map and so forth, so we have an idea of where things are planned and so on. So we don't lose them when developers come in, that somehow if we don't have easements, then maybe we need to develop them to implement it.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, and Denise and I have talked about it. For the TSP projects, we have created a map layer that shows all the various projects, sidewalk connectivity projects. So when a development comes in theory, our development engineers that are reviewing those projects can flip on that layer and say, "Oh, there's a intersection improvement project here, or there's a trail project here." But these, like I said, these are more like, there's some on-street stuff here, but it's really those off-street projects that wouldn't necessarily be on the
Right.
transportation system plan that we should incorporate into that. So I think when Phil gets here, we'll probably have that conversation and figure out, whether that's a high priority or low priority. I'm not really sure where the park's priorities are.
Got more and more people walking these days, I've noticed that.
Well, so the trails are under the, are they under the natural resources committees?
I would say not. Unless it's identified as a natural resource
Are they-
area.
Transportation?
Is the
So parks, so parks are varied. Some parks in Oregon City, like the one on the bluff here, is on park property for the most part, right? And then
The
there's
trail.
legs of it that aren't. But so typically, if it's on park property, then it's a parks trails plan. And I think the parks trails plan, I haven't looked at everybody that was involved with it, but I don't know if Nancy was involved with it at that time. She may have commented on it, but
Yes.
most of that plan came out of the PrAC and Parks Department, right?
Yeah, there's a listing on the inside cover of who participated in that in the 2003, 2004. I'm sure it took more than a few months to put that together. So whoever was on the committee whoever was on the PrAC, whoever was on the staff, and the collaboration between departments, because it does overlay into transportation. So I would assume Nancy Krushauer, at the time, was our public works director. Scott was here then, so Scott Archer. And then
Sean was on.
I think Sean was on that. So there are some people that have overlaid that are still around. But again, these are conceptual plans, and might be worth looking at as updating. I know that Doug has some concepts of what he would like to see as far as some signage and things like that. So I'm sure that, when Phil comes on board, there'll be some more discussions about trails and where those priorities lay.
Just to clarify the question, the Natural Resource Committee comes into play when things are within a steep slopes ordinance area, or where you have delineated wetlands and so forth. But in terms of trails, not really.
I mean, this study actually lays out some responsibility, and that's one of the things I was surprised to learn about. There's particular trails in here that says implementation is not only just parks responsibility, but it's public works responsibility. So, yeah, we need to become more familiar with this plan and figure out how it's either, it's probably fine if it's duplicating what's in the TSP, because we're pretty familiar with that. But in this case, it's kind of not necessarily, as I get that it's a transportation element, but it's kind of like just an internal trail within that kind of Waterboard Park trail system, and not like what we typically see, like trying to get from downtown to South End Road or something. Those are a little more,
So we have regional and local trails.
Yeah.
So the regional trails are typically transportation and parks related, as well as metro regional trails. So in the metro world, they connect a lot of the regional trails for transportation. So there is some overlaying within different agencies, as well as within our own internal agency.
We're not always in silos. Most of the time we're in silos, but not always.
Thank you, John.
Thanks,
John.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to general business. First is our Willamette Falls Legacy Project standing update. And we have a beautiful packet placed in front of us.
So in front of you is a press release that actually went out, I think, on the 19th of September. The gist of that press release is the partner's decision not to include a whitewater park. Basically, it's kind of self-explanatory, and again, I'll let you read it quickly. It's
Or this one that says media advisory
Yep.
on it.
And
Got
it has gone out publicly, so the group decided unanimously to move forward on its public Riverwalk project as planned, without further consideration of a proposal to integrate a whitewater park into the project. So, and that was the partners group decision.
But the Whitewater Park was going to be on the private property anyway, so it could continue on its own funding if it so moves forward in that direction.
Right. And I think that there's been some confusion as to the funding mechanisms for the projects. So the Riverwalk project funding is very specifically allocated to the Riverwalk. So there are constraints on how they can utilize that funding. Without another funding source, it's difficult for them to continue doing the survey studying and, the things that need to come into play to integrate. That's my basic understanding of that. There are nuances and intricacies to this that are well beyond my understanding, because I'm not in every single meeting, which...
And people can listen to the city commission meeting where it was debated at length.
Exactly. So this is just an update. This media piece is already out publicly, So this is just, again, for your information.
Okay.
The second packet is from Snowhetta, and they're getting ready to produce the design alternatives and then ask for public feedback. So again, they are looking to come to PrAC on, they're asking for the December agenda, although we don't typically have a December meeting. That may precipitate a meeting off the typical fourth Thursday of the month, because that would be the holiday. Actually, I think Christmas might fall on the weekend this year.
When
I
you
would
s-
have to look.
Denise, when you say second packet, I mean, that's one packet.
Correct.
Sorry.
That's the packet.
The other was just the one-page
The
press
single
release.
page was the media release.
Got it. This is the
The
Snowhetta package.
Beautiful Snowhetta
Yes, got it.
packet is
Okay,
your
with
second
you.
packet.
Okay.
So we need to decide whether we're going to do a November, December combined meeting, which we often do earlier in December.
And I think that will be a decision that you folks will make with Phil in the October meeting.
The fourth Thursday in December would be December 22nd. Christmas is on Sunday.
So we could.
But there's also the November meeting, which we normally skip because it's Thanksgiving.
Not a cool picture.
So there- I know that we've done one in early December.
Yeah, the fourth is
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. Yeah, that's right. Last year we did like December 8th or something,
Mhm.
and
We-
combined.
yeah.
So it's something to think about. I know that Phil is coming in for the October meeting. He comes in, so skipping ahead, Phil starts on Monday. So Phil Lewis is the new Community Services Director. He starts on Monday. I've been sending him copies of emails and requests to be on agendas for the next 3 or 4 meetings. So he will, once he gets through all his emails, be up to speed as to some of these requests. So I would expect that in correspondence for your October meeting, that you guys may have some conversations regarding the next upcoming dates, just because there'll have to be some coordination with all these folks that want to do presentations for you.
And so those PrAC members who are not here tonight will also need to chime in on dates that they are available for a November, December meeting.
And that's why I think that discussion coordination through email before the
Yeah.
October meeting may need to occur. So,
Okay,
yes.
all right.
I do have a question about the packet here. There's this nice cross-section, which is interesting. I assume that water level represents the floodplain?
I am not sure.
I
I
would
didn't
think
get
so,
into-
because I don't think the water's that deep.
I did not get into
Yeah,
I did not get into the detail of this because it does not give elevations.
right,
So it would be difficult for me to
right.
ascertain what Snowhetta had in mind.
Yeah.
I would be speaking for them, and I would prefer not to.
No, I don't blame
That
you.
would be a
Well,
question for them.
well, I'll
at
try to
December
reserve that
meeting.
question for later.
I think that, when they get ready for those,
Yeah.
obviously, if you have specific questions, you can send them to me, and I can forward them to Snowhetta through Kelly Reed. She would be our conduit. So if you do have some specific questions, feel free to ask them, and we'll forward them on. So, but I just wanted to let you know that they are looking for public feedback. They will be coming to you folks for feedback, and just.
And they'll be having another public open house at some point.
My understanding is November they will be doing their next public event to show the Riverwalk design alternatives and ask for the public feedback, and then they would be coming to you in December.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to getting that November date.
And as soon as I get that, I will forward that, or Phil will, because Phil will be in these meetings
Yeah.
starting next
Starting
week or the
Monday.
week after.
Okay, all right. Thank you. That's a lot to digest there. Will give us some time to look at it. Next on our agenda, if we're ready to move on, would be the Clackamas Park Riverfront Master Plan update.
And you all have this lovely packet. I do apologize, this one is not double-sided. We're having some printer issues late this afternoon. So we did have on the 15th an Oregon State Marine Board City open house to discuss the relocation of Clackamas Park boat ramp. It was, I'd say we had a little over a dozen folks that attended. So a decent showing, knowledgeable and well-spoken individuals in regards to questions and thoughts. This packet is the presentation that OSMB, Oregon State Marine Board, presented. Janine Bilek did a very good job of explaining
Yes, she did.
in detail as well as process how this works. In a nutshell, she explained the hydrology, the funding mechanisms, the processes, the permits, and the hydrology elements that we are dealing with along the Clackamas River. And in doing that, we also had our hydrologist who did the hydrology evaluation for us that gave us the conceptual best location for the ramp. So if you guys recall, the ramp is going to be more towards the mouth of the Willamette. And I believe in the packet,
This is the 5-year ramp, right? Not the.
no, the
No.
existing ramp is the 5-year repair that
Okay,
we've
so we
just
okay.
completed.
So you are talking about the 20-year ramp, or well,
Yeah,
one-
we're talking about,
Yeah.
in about 5 years,
Yes.
a new ramp location that will last us about 20 to 25 years.
Yeah.
And that new ramp location, I don't see it on
Right.
this map.
Yeah,
I should have
was
brought
trying
the
to-
other one down. But it is, let me see if I can find a,
There were no page numbers.
on the hydrology, we're looking right, here's the existing ramp,
Mm-hmm.
and we're looking right about here,
Yeah.
somewhere in this area. So, the mayor was here, Sean attended, Mike attended, Joyce attended, Brian Shaw attended, so, and I believe Nancy Ide was there. So we had a number of folks, interested parties that would be making some of these decisions. There is a page towards the back that talks about timeline.
On the cost page, or
Just behind the cost page, which,
permit timeline?
permit timelines. Actually, and so the permit timelines, that gives you an idea of how long it will take us to get permits.
Starting next spring
Mhm.
and ending 3 years later.
Yep. And just as an actual Sportcraft boat ramp, when we replaced that boat ramp, that took me 3 years and $20,000 to get permits. So the almost 20,000 that we spent was prior to us even knowing if we would get permits. So I don't think we're gonna take as much, I'm hoping, doesn't take as much in the permitting expenses, because you have to do some testing and things like that in the riverbeds, because you're gonna be kind of boiling up what's in the riverbed. And so they're looking at how much contamination are you going to be producing that is already laden in the beds. So I don't know what our permits cost would entail with today's standards. So, but I'm just conceptually and factually, we know it took us a while for Sportcraft. It's gonna take us a while in this day and age to do the Clackamas River. If you flip to the next page, the project timeline,
And that's the biggie, that
that's,
top line
this
right
is
there.
this is the big marker that we will have to have a written decision from the city to Oregon State Marine Board by the end of this year in order for Oregon State Marine Board to be able to continue working on this project with us. So,
That's just 2 PrAC meetings.
yes.
And the city
I didn't mean to
council.
interrupt. Are you done?
We did get a verbal commitment from the mayor, however, that is not a consensus from the commission, nor is it a city decision that's in writing that allows Oregon State Marine Board to move forward. So the Oregon State Marine Board is looking for that written city decision.
And that decision would be that the boat ramp is 350 feet downstream from the existing boat ramp.
They were supportive of doing that project concept, yes.
Basically, that's due to you can see in those pictures progressive from 2007 to 11 and then 13 that there's more and more buildup on that northern side. And so by moving it east, that,
Wes?
They
I'm
figured,
sorry,
Moving it
west, I meant
west.
west, yeah, that then gets out of
they're-
that
yeah,
buildup
they're
area.
looking at that channel with the flows and the way the flows work, that channel will continue to scour itself out and not build up in that location.
I need clarification. Are we talking about the one in 5 years in terms of this, or are we talking about the one that we're going to,
Talking
kind of
about
the rebuild
relocation.
of the, or re-access, even though it's been moved?
The 5-year fix is done.
It's
So that was
completed.
the repair in the existing ramp.
So this is actually, this timeline is for the new ramp.
This is for the new ramp. I've already done the permitting, I've already done the repair project, the boat ramp is open
Okay.
The old boat
In the
ramp.
current location.
Okay.
in the current location.
Okay.
So,
Well, I assume that, just to be sure, I mean, we expressed a concern here, and I know the city commission actually presented at a later date the same kind of concern, that we did not want to see much lost in the way of current parkland.
we're only agreeing to look at the concept of the location of the ramp.
Okay,
The transportation aspect or the traffic lane concept has not been vetted.
okay, so,
What we presented when we did the ramp was concepts. What we now need to do is, if this is an agreement with the city and the city wants to support the concept of moving that ramp location down about 350 feet, we have a range within that, a little bit of wiggle room, that we then produce some documents, which would be drawings, to vet a traffic pattern that's acceptable. And then once that is vetted, which we have a timeline to get the design complete, which is April of 2017. So the sooner we get the decision by the city to support it, the sooner we can start moving down the road to design. Once that design concept is vetted and becomes the design, then we do the construction documents. And then once the construction documents are done, then we start going through the permitting process. So that's why that timeline, the page before that, shows the permitting process. The project timeline shows windows for each area. They're tight windows. In order for us to get through what we project as a 5-year fix to the existing ramp, we have 5 years to get to a new ramp. We can hope that we don't have any extreme water events, but we've hoped that we've made that ramp repair strong enough to hold through significant water events, but extreme water
Right.
events,
yes, I
you
understand.
know. So we are looking at a 5-year window.
Right, so I guess the confusion was when I looked at this, I didn't see the new ramp was in these pictures, and now I think it's clear to me.
It's just,
Yeah,
number one, do we want a ramp?
Yeah.
And, and do we want that ramp to be in the Clackamas? Because that's the only place that the Marine Board is willing to work with the city.
Basically help fund
Yes.
the majority of the
The majority of the
project.
funding would come from the Marine Board. And looking at the hydrologist study and saying, this is really where the boat ramp needs to be.
Mhm. Yeah,
And Janine also made a significant point that while the Clackamas Park boat ramp was closed, we lost 40% of our boating facilities in the area. So she made some significant points in regards to the closures that were occurring, the ramps available, the impacts of offloading a closed ramp onto other ramps. It makes a significant maintenance impact. So they're looking at,
yeah,
the global picture
right.
of what that capacity is and how that facilitates the boating access.
And she took a large view of really the whole Portland metro area, not just Clackamas County. It was quite a significant presentation, and I
Mike,
appreciate
you
what
had a
she did.
comment?
Well, just a couple of things that I took away. I mean, it's obvious that from the Marine Board perspective, here's where your boat ramp is going to be, take it or leave it. You know, she was not it was not an open house to discuss where the boat ramp ought to be. This is where it's going to be.
This
If
is
you
where
want
they're
us-
willing to support it based on the hydrology evaluation
Right.
and their funding mechanisms.
But, okay, so I guess that I just kind of want to make sure everybody here understands. Most of the people in the room were boaters. And with the Marine Board driving this, there was no discussion of what it was going to look like above the water. And as Doug has already mentioned, I know we've talked about it. But my concern is there's going to be a lot of pressure to make the best possible arrangement for boaters, regardless of what that might mean for other park users.
But that's where this committee comes in. There
Exactly.
needs to be a happy medium.
And that's what I'm trying to say. We are going to have to be on our toes because otherwise it may have way more impact in the park than we want it to have. That's the
But,
only point I
like,
was trying to make.
I got kind of a different impression from some of the boaters. Some of the boaters wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to impact the park so greatly. So, you know, I think that, you know, that we need to talk more with boaters. And I'm sorry Sean's not here because he would be one of those boaters, as to how we could get minimal impact of the park, putting the boat ramp, the 350-ish feet down towards the Willamette along the Clackamas River. But yeah, you're right. We need to make sure that we can support the concept at this point. If the committee so desires to send that to the City Commission and give our recommendation to City Commission in that, for that. But that's just the placement of the boat ramp if we can get those above the water roadways that are not going to take away 2/3 of the park.
Right. And so all of that decision making as far as the park is concerned will be theoretically done by April 2017. That's when the design will be finalized.
Theoretically. I think if we're going to stick to the timeline for permitting and our 5-year window that we're trying to shoot for, then yes, that's
Okay.
kind of our timeline.
I noticed 12 permits and compliances. We've been dealing with permits at the depot. And I look at that and I'm going, oh my gosh, this isn't going to get done till 2050.
I've done the Sportcraft boat ramp replacement, the
Yep.
John Storm debris boom, and the Clackamas boat ramp repair. Those are all joint DSL permits that go through all of these regulatory
Okay.
agencies. It's not fun.
I-
It's definitely tedious. I have a lot of support through Oregon State Marine Board. They've been excellent partners. Janine has been wonderful to work with, extremely professional, very well versed in dealing with these permitting issues, and her team is excellent to work with. I couldn't ask for a better support team as a small government agency that we don't have, you know, these type of expertise in-house that we can rely on an agency, a state agency, and get this much support readily, and they're very, very extremely helpful in every project that we've done.
So the first on this list, in the permits and compliance, the first one on the list is U.S. Army Corps of Engineer permit. Turn back to the permit timeline. That's in where does that come up? Corps.
27 January 20.
January 2019 is the Corps
So
issues permit. So we start this list of permitting in January 2019. Am I reading that right?
No, that's when we hope that they issue us the permit after we've submitted the permit 2.5 years
Applied.
earlier.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that right?
yes, so it takes a long time once you've submitted those permits. It's a joint permit typically that I submit, which is the DSL, Department of State Lands, and COE is Corps of Engineers. So when you see CORPS, that's the Corps of Engineers, Army Corps of Engineers. Those are the two agencies you submit your joint permit to. Those agencies then disperse that permit out to other regulatory agencies for comment periods, as well as the public. So it goes through a long, rigorous process through each of those agencies, commenting, providing feedback or regulatory things that we need to comply with. We need to resubmit stuff to make sure that we're in compliance. They review it again. It comes back. It's a little bit back and forth for a little bit, but it's the ones that are the most difficult to get through are NOAA fisheries, and I'm blanking all of a sudden. It's typically the biological ones. Those are the most difficult to get through the process. They don't have as much of a timeline to get back to you. So it's
And-
not like us where we have 30 days to comment and return back
Right.
to an
And
owner on
most-
a permit.
Most all of these permits and compliances have to do with the placement and design of that,
The impacts
not-
to the environment,
not to the park itself.
yeah, it's going to be
It's just
in
the
water
water.
impacts,
Okay.
as well as we also have tribal and cultural historic consultations that have to occur as well.
It looks like there's a number of trees there where they plan on putting it.
If you look at the trees and the tree qualities,
Those
And-
cottonwood trees are, yeah, they're.
there's mitigations that would occur. So I think that there are opportunities for us to continue to diversify our tree canopy in Clackamas Park to a better benefit of the park, whereas cottonwoods are.
Deadly.
Cottonwoods.
I'll let the natural resources guy say that.
They're not
Cotton-
native, are they?
They may be native.
Is it deadly?
I mean, they serve a specific function, but
They serve a specific function. They are not necessarily the most stable, nor are they the most.
they,
Dangerous sometimes.
yeah.
I-
they are.
We are finding historically in Clackamas Park that they are potentially very hazardous. Ones that we're finding are in decline. Once we cut into them and take them down, we've taken pictures, and there's the holdwood. Holdwood is the wood that's still good, holding it together. So the holdwood,
It's on
the
outside.
ring, might only be about that big around for a tree that's like this big. The rest of it might be rot.
Its function in nature is that if you have a flood come through, the cottonwood seeds rapidly, it comes back rapidly. So it does the
Yeah,
trees don't last out the flood, but they regenerate very rapidly. And
They
so
were never
are-
meant to be 50-year
And they're not-
trees.
They aren't 50-year trees.
But I think that, through the process of designing this, looking at it in terms of the upland side, so there's in water and then there's upland. So in the upland areas, we would have to really look at the mitigations that we might want to do that could help make a healthier tree canopy within Clackamas Park. There's opportunities in doing this that would be directly long-term benefits to the park. So while we might be taking some out, we may be doing a bigger benefit in the long run if we're smart about how we approach mitigation. So there are some opportunities in this. So this will be coming back to you. It will be something that we would like to continue moving forward with. Again, there was the city still needs to do a written decision to Oregon State Marine Board that they are supporting this. And that's where we're heading, is to hit this timeline of before the end of the year.
So as a prac, what we really need to do is take this stuff home and study it and look at it. Make sure that the members that aren't here tonight have a chance to take a look at this and really bring our opinions back at our October meeting so that by the November meeting, if need, November-December meeting, we can make a recommendation. But it would be nice if we could make a recommendation to City Commission
Right.
at our next meeting.
Yeah.
Would that be?
Do you know when they're planning to take it up?
Well, typically when we go to commission, you do a work session. So the commission meetings are the first and third Wednesday. The work sessions are the Tuesday after the first Wednesday meeting. So it would typically go to a commission work session, then be assigned to an agenda at a regular city commission meeting for
So
an
really,
action.
our next meeting, we need to be prepared to make a recommendation to city commission.
I would have to look at the calendar to see if the timing will work that we would get on. You have to do your commission work session agenda 1 week prior for posting purposes, public posting purposes, 1 week prior to that meeting. So the Tuesday prior to that, it has to be done and posted. So our agenda packets are usually a little bit before that. It's going to be a tight window for your decision to move it forward to the city commission work session.
So
With a
you
decision.
prefer a decision tonight? Is that what you're trying to tell us?
We have a quorum. It would benefit,
Okay.
let's see, it would benefit Phil greatly not to be tight on the timeline. Because Phil would be taking this project over to make presentations to the city commission and moving this down the line. So
Well,
my interim is done on Friday. So
Okay.
I'll go ahead and put a motion to recommend to the city commission to go ahead with the request.
Right.
And we can have a discussion afterwards, but
I'll second.
Okay, so it's moved by Neely and seconded by Mitchell. Discussion.
I guess the discussion is that we'll have a discussion once things are
Oh,
going
okay.
through that
All
process.
right. So, is everybody clear on the motion? Blaine, questions?
Yeah, I'm fine.
We're gonna make a motion without discussion then, right? Is that what?
No, wait.
No, they have to make their decision by the end of the year, the commission.
So he has moved that PrAC
Okay.
recommend to the city commission to move forward with the Marine Board's recommended placement of the boat ramp.
So what is our homework then? Because we're already past
Well,
that.
at this point, we're backing it up. Your homework is done. Look at that.
Oh, boy. No. I'm just
Well,
kidding.
it makes sense. If this is what the Marine Board, based on hydrology reports, is willing to support, then it seems to me to be pretty straightforward. When it comes to, park design and whatnot, then, we need to put our heads together and come up with a coordinated plan for that. But that's not the decision tonight.
Okay, so I'm ready to call the question. You want to take a voice vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you.
Still don't understand.
All right.
We're
None?
tying ourselves in, or-
Do you have a
No,
question?
I'm sorry.
Okay. Moving on to the agenda, to 5C, the non-smoking parks policy update.
I
If
just
it's
wanted-
60, it's okay.
I just wanted to let you know that is on the agenda for the October City Commission work session. So that is moving forward. So it was just a brief update. Your next one.
Okay, so if you want to see what's going on, then you can take a look at what the city commission, and we can attend those work sessions.
They may or may not ask for comment, but you
Yes,
can
okay,
definitely
that
listen
you're
in.
welcome to
We've
attend.
all had we've all had a chance to see the recommended ordinance. So
Right.
Okay, that was a lot of work and to get up to that point, so thank you, and especially
Yes.
Bob. He's not here tonight, but we appreciate the work that he put into that. Next up is the PrAC open position and applications.
So there are 3 members that are going off of PrAC committee on the end of December. Chris, there's a vacant position, and Bob. So we're hoping that, I think Bob is termed out, but Chris could reapply. So we're hoping Chris does reapply. And then it would be by appointment but we would be recommending applicants to go forward to the mayor. So at this point, we have one application in, and there will be a big announcement for pushes for open board positions or committee positions coming up shortly. So I talked to Katie Riggs, and she did say that she would be making another push for applications. So hopefully we'll have applications for you. I would hope by that November, December, that you can make decisions, and maybe October do some interviews. Again, it's all based on how those applications come in, but we do have one currently. And that way we can make a recommendation to the commission so that they'll have them in December. They can make the appointments that those people can start in January.
So, applications are open now, pretty
Yes.
much. Okay, and is there a closing date? Okay, until
Appointments to
filled?
fill, yeah.
Okay, I thought there used to be a closing date.
There used to be, but we haven't always had enough to fill all slots.
Right. So if you know of somebody that lives in this city that you think would be good to be on our panel, encourage them to apply.
And they all have to be city residents, right?
We have one that non-city resident, and that's already filled.
Okay.
I think we can, by our bylaws, I would have to double check, but I think by our bylaws we can have two. I have to look though. I think we've always traditionally have had one, and then one member,
Kind of at large.
Pioneer Center.
A Pioneer Center.
Oh, yeah,
and-
that's right.
And
So-
we have Rogers that.
I would just have to double check on the bylaws.
Okay.
I would have to double check.
Okay.
So if we can get some applications so that at our October meeting, we might be able to meet early and do some interviews at that meeting, possibly. So
Probably.
either you or Phil will let us know.
We'll let you know.
Okay. Appreciate that. We're ready to move on?
So this
The-
next one,
Exclusions from Parks Amendment, and we have verbiage for that in front of us.
yes. So this is a Chapter 12 park exclusions. In Chapter 12 currently, there are citations or fines that are associated to the violations of our park rules. Banning smoking is in Chapter 12, so you guys are familiar with that chapter. We are seeing a vast amount of repeat offenders in the parks, and so the police will cite them or arrest them, and then they can come back and do what they were doing that they got them cited or arrested before. We've been working with Sean Davis, Captain Sean Davis with the police department, John Waverly, and trying to come up with some ways that we can kind of help the parks out in terms of behaviors and the culture that's starting in our parks. So one of the ideas that came up was park exclusions. So a park exclusion would be that police officer can cite them or exclude them from the park, and it would be a 30-day exclusion. Then there's exponential exclusion periods for repeat offenders. So within 30 days, if they've in 2 years been excluded, then their next exclusion would be 90 days, and it just continues to get longer, up to 180 days. The idea is to try and change some cultural behavior that cultivating in the parks of late, and again, repeat offenders. So what we do in some of our facilities is exclusions. This is mirroring some of that. So if we have an exclusion, say at the pool, our pool staff gets a photo that this person has been excluded. They come back in, they're trespassing. And with an exclusion and trespassing, they can be arrested. So it describes, the offenses that are in other chapters. that if those occur in our parks can lead to an exclusion. So this is, it's a pretty extensive, did I send this to you guys in email? So I didn't want you guys to have to read all of this here tonight, so hopefully you had time to read through that packet and just looking to see if there's any feedback. We are planning to take this to the City Commission work session, again on the October work session, with trying to combine those two Chapter 12 items instead of having a Chapter 12 in October and a Chapter 12 again in November or December, that this could all go together in a work session, and then it would follow suit with, even though they're two separate items, it would follow suit if they're approved to go forward from that work session to a City Commission meeting together. But again, separate items.
I have a question on that. On the second page there where it lists the Section 12 violations, it doesn't mention smoking.
But it does say park regulations, 1216.020.
E, line item
Yeah,
E.
okay, I see that. Okay.
I don't.
But possession of alcoholic beverages, I just thought it,
Currently,
Should it
because
be-
it hasn't passed, the
It's
banning
not-
smoking can't be included.
I can't be included. Okay.
However, if
It's
we...
covered under park regulations.
Yeah, and then if
Okay.
we're moving them forward, we can be a little more specific in the language
Right.
later, but because it hasn't been approved as an ordinance.
I think this is a great idea. It gives the police department a little flexibility, yet it still gives them something to fall back on to help us stop what's going on in the park. So I think it's a great idea.
But along with this, it gives the person who's getting the exclusion the opportunity to
appeal it.
appeal it.
Appeal, right.
So there's an appeal process within this as well. So we're covering our bases in terms of, it's not a just obligatory exclusion. They can appeal it, they can state their case, and it can be heard and decided upon that way.
Does it go to the municipal court or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are fireworks allowed in the parks?
No, but that's in our, I think
That-
that's in a park regulation.
That's in here too, or so they don't get excluded for shooting off fireworks?
It could.
If fireworks are included in our park regulations, then yes.
Okay, so
We're not calling out every park regulation
Oh, okay.
within this because
all right.
Chapter
Line
12
E,
has a
yeah.
number of things within it.
Okay,
So there are a couple of things that were called out separately, like
all right.
alcoholic beverages came in later. That was an ordinance that came in after the park rules generally had been adopted. So there were point in times where things had changed. That's why they have a different number. But for the most part, the regulations have a fairly good list. If you look back at the smoking ban and Chapter 12, Chapter 12 has a list of regulations for parks.
Okay, Denise, any action required on our part? Or do we want to recommend this to City Commission?
We were just looking for your support and we're looking to move it forward. So we were just looking for your support and if there was any opposition to us moving it forward.
Okay.
I did have a question. Loitering, we've been up to the old Kenema Park a couple of times in the last month. There have been groups of kids just kind of hanging out. They weren't doing anything wrong, but it's unsettling.
If they're not violating a law or a rule,
Yeah,
hanging out as a public space
is okay.
okay.
Okay. I was concerned about Chapter 166, offenses against public order, firearms and other weapons, racketeering, and I wondered what impact that might have on the pickleball.
I'll abstain from commenting.
Racketeering. Yeah, I love it. Thank you. Oh, we needed that, Blaine. Thank you.
You've been waiting for that since you read this, haven't you?
That's great.
Mike, you had a comment?
I was just going to say, on that Kenema Park thing, I went to the Kenema Neighborhood Association meeting the same night as the boat ramp thing. And that did come up. There was a police officer there, and he said that he's been making an effort, and the department's been making an effort to investigate that. And he said that's what they're finding. People are hanging out
Mhm.
and looking at the stars and not doing anything problematic. They're just hanging out in the park.
That's
Yeah,
one of the
well-
reasons for the park.
Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
and we-
So from the police
We have
department
been there a
perspective,
couple of
it's
times
not-
where we drove up and parked next to in that little parking lot there,
Mhm.
and there've been like people putting things away,
Scary,
and
yeah.
so it's pretty sketchy in there.
Anytime you see illegal activity, if you can take a photograph of it
Mhm.
or a video of it, and you call the police and say those folks have left, but you have a license plate and you have a video of a crime occurring, the police will take action on it.
Mm.
So
Okay.
the problem we're having is people will tell us, hey, yesterday we saw blah, blah, blah. Well, we can't do anything about it, and the police can't do anything about it. There's no evidence of a crime occurring other than hearsay.
Mm.
If an act of criminal activity is occurring and you're a witness to it, making the call, taking a photo, taking a video, if you're not compromising yourself or putting yourself in danger, that can help the police.
Okay.
So people will report it to us all the time over the phone. Days later, it doesn't do us any good. We're imploring the community to start making calls when they're seeing it so that the police can do their job when the crime is occurring.
Okay.
So I think that Captain Sean Davis has done a pretty good job of talking to the public as well in terms of what kind of help the public can be to us when he goes to meetings. I know that he's encouraged us to take photos. We'll call and we'll be there on site, and then they'll roll up and it's gone. So most of our guys have the capacity to take photos with their phones, their work phones, and we can capture, document, and hand it over to the police. So it's been a good collaboration with our police department. They've been extremely helpful. They called and asked for keys to John Storm Park restroom. They are noticing that the transients have worked around our timed lock system and are sleeping in our restrooms down there. They asked for keys so they can go in and check when they're on patrol. And I thought that was fabulous.
Mm.
So we're hoping that with some of these other things will help curb a lot of the vandalism we're having just in and around our parks.
So do we need just a vote of support for the language for the park exclusions from PRAC committee to the city commission?
So moved.
Moved
Second.
by Neely and seconded by Mr. Meyer.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The Vietnam Memorial Wall project, is that the one that's along the,
That's what we're going to talk about.
okay?
It was along the trail.
The promontory? Come on.
Promenade.
Promenade.
Thank
Along
you.
the promenade.
Give me the word.
It was along the promenade just in front of the VFW hall and right next to the stairway. However, what we found out through planning, which is always good to go through that process, we don't own all that property.
Mm.
PG owns a portion of their property and the city owns a portion of that property.
Ah,
So they have proposed a location next to the VFW. My understanding from Laura Turway, Community Development Director, is that we would lose about 2 parking spots-ish. She asked if I was opposed to that, being that that's a future project. Phil coming on board here in the next week. It's really going to be Phil's decision if he feels that's a problem or not. Parking is always an issue down there, but the VFW is strongly supportive of this project moving forward. It's those folks who park there. So if they're supportive and they don't feel that's going to be a huge impact, I'm pretty sure that Phil will be supportive of it. But again, Phil coming in new, he kind of has to get up to speed on this one. They will be meeting. So what they did is Evan Connell, Party with a Purpose, who's wanting to help fund this project through a fundraiser. They had a board meeting, got everybody caught up. discuss their fundraising goals and getting things set up for their goals and events and activities that produce those funds. They will be launching the activities soon. So what he said he's going to do is he's met with the memorial company, and they're engaging them into helping the redesign to fit the new placement area. Once they get that, they'll show it to you folks, and they're looking at getting onto the agenda next month to make a presentation to you. So I forwarded that to Phil for the next agenda items, and they'd like to give that report and update to you folks. So I think they're moving forward. They're excited to move forward, and I think they're still working with planning as far as, you know, process. So just wanted to give you a quick update on that.
We'll
I,
look forward to that in
Sean
October.
and I went with other. Well, I'm not a veteran, but we're there with some of the members of the Veterans Association, and Laura and Christina came from planning, and were extremely helpful in terms of the discussion about the beach easement. I think Christina was there primarily from the standpoint of it being a historic walkway, but they were made great recommendations, and I think planning is not always an obstacle. Planning is not always an obstacle, and they did a great job.
And I think if you engage from the onset of a project, it makes it just that much easier.
Yeah.
So that's all I have on that one.
Okay, thank you. Other general business? I hear from anybody? Member reports. Can we start down with Roger?
Alrighty. So I have some items from the Pioneer Center to report. The main parking lot is currently being torn up and replaced, hopefully to be completed this week. By the way, the other parking lot by the church is done, except for some striping.
Yeah, it's not striped yet.
Yes.
Yep.
Second item, an overnight trip to Leavenworth, Washington, that is happening this week, is full. They'll be gone for 3 days. And lastly, a Walk with Ease group started this week and is full.
You could announce it earlier.
You know,
You have to
we
check
you know,
their
this happens so
calendar.
fast, Doug.
Yeah.
Okay, the pickleball group invited us to. They sent an invitation out for people on their grand opening of their court, and I decided to go, even though it was raining. I went down there, and Doug was there too. I'll let him give his take on it. But it was a nice group of people, and they put some tents up, and the court looks beautiful. If you haven't seen it yet, and then somehow Doug and I got snaggled into learning how to play, and then we got stuck in some kind of a competition. So I brought something to show and tell.
I heard about this.
Since I was representing track,
Very good.
Hey.
we got a trophy, first place in the dinking competition.
He's a dinker.
And I got the card for coffee, so we can all go out and have coffee.
Coffee card.
Oh, great.
Congratulations.
Pretty cool.
It was tough, but you know.
But somebody had to do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Man, that's
Thanks,
amazing.
Roger.
Let's see. Well, I guess I'm done because you're going to take
You're on a roll. You can keep
Okay.
going if you want.
Oh, I know. I should report too that there's a backstop that will be rebuilt there.
The
and
pickleball, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The pickleball backstop, and
As long as we can fix their
They-
racketeering.
They are, yeah. I have a correction for the racketeering. They're actually called paddles. I'm sorry.
No, it doesn't say paddling.
Doesn't say yeah.
Paddling is allowed in the parks.
No,
No
that would come under
paddleteering.
hazing, right? I know. And that's it for me.
Okay, Mike.
Okay, just a couple of quick things from the Parks Foundation, let you know what we're involved in. As Roger mentioned, the backboard, we have partnered with the pickleball group, and we're going to provide some volunteer labor to get, they have a grant for the materials, and we're going to provide the labor to put that wall, practice wall up. We have submitted for a grant from a foundation called the HDR Foundation. HDR is an engineering firm, and they provide community grants as long as you have a local, it's a very large international company, and as long as you have a local person, a local employee active with partnering up with your foundation, you can apply for these grants, which we've done. And that would be for invasive species removal in Waterboard Park. Our grant committee is meeting tomorrow on a grant to Clackamas County's Cultural Coalition grant program, and that would be for a planting and a pad for a sculpture and hopefully a bench at the library, and then a later stage of the grant would be for a sculpture that would go there. So that's kind of what's going on with the foundation. We're not quite up against our 9 o'clock usual deadline. It was kind of interesting. I read a book called Empires of Light, and it's about the struggle of AC or DC current between Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
And it was confusing the way it was written, and I need to do a little more research, but it did mention the powerhouse at Willamette Falls. That was either the first or second long-distance transmission of electricity in the world.
It was the
It's not
first.
that that's just, yeah.
It
It's
was
not,
the first.
was it first
Yeah.
before Niagara Falls?
Niagara Falls, we did it first. Niagara did it with AC. We did it with DC.
DC, right.
Yeah.
And it's mentioned in there. So I mean, I always knew that was an old powerhouse, but it's
Yeah.
huge history. And Tesla's version actually won.
Well,
Tesla
it was
was
it was
the
first, but it
AC.
wasn't efficient.
Yeah, but Tesla was the promoter of AC for longest. Anyway,
No.
Yeah.
He was the promotion of direct current.
no, Edison was.
Yeah.
Edison was direct current. Edison preferred
that's
direct
right,
current.
that's right,
Because
that's
he
right.
thought AC
That's right,
was
that's right.
deadly
Yes.
because it could kill you, and DC won't. Anyway.
Yes.
And a quick question for Denise, and honestly, I don't know where I read it, but I read something about a charter park update.
Yes, I think we've talked about this before, at least when I started the interim, is that we were producing the map and a charter park update that will be basically updating those parks that weren't necessarily deeded park property or for park purposes. Those that are parks will then be, like Wesley Lynn and all these other ones, will be clearly charter parks, whereas they may or may not decisively by the deed state park. So we're
And
doing that update.
And that goes back to having to vote on
that
change of park usage and legal
And
kind of
the-
just
it's-
legal status.
it's
But
the legal status.
More to follow.
It's basically we're looking at trying to get the packet to, it's all of our parks listed, mapped correctly with the correct legal descriptions. There was one piece in there in the charter park that we didn't own as a city, as a charter park. So we're making some corrections. We're making sure the legal descriptions match the map, because some of the legal descriptions were incorrect. So we had to go back into the archives and the county, and we really did a lot. Jamie Reed did an amazing job of digging, and Chris Dunlap was working with Jamie in correlation to the mapping portions and making sure that the relationship of the legal descriptions matched our mapping and so forth. So the two of them, they did the heavy lifting. I'm just moving this forward through legal review, making sure that we can get on a work session agenda, and then basically the commission will re-bless the charter park packet.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
I've got a request, and first of all, the one that probably shouldn't be in there is the triangular piece of property there at Charmin and Electric Road.
The one we don't own.
Yeah, we don't own it, and it says the charter we don't own it, but if we ever do, it becomes a charter park. It was, I don't know, if somebody wanted to get a hold of it.
We're running that through legal right now
Right.
in terms of,
But my question is this, that the city owns that property right along Clackamas River on the other side of the South Fork, not South Fork, excuse me, Tri-City Sewer Plant. That's city owned, and it is not a park, and it should be.
if it wasn't deeded a park and it's not listed as a park, then another action needs to take place prior to us making it a charter
Well,
park.
And maybe you can't make it on this go-around, but that should be a park.
It's owned by Urban Renewal, isn't it, right
No,
now?
not that. That's
Okay.
that's along. That's not on the cove on the river.
Okay.
Always been in city ownership ever since I've been here.
Is that where the parking lot is?
On the river.
Yes, where
Yeah.
the parking lot is.
Now,
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
we should at least name it. So,
I'll have to look at our map, and we may, if it's, because like that parking lot, we maintain that's the trail head.
mhm.
Mhm.
Is that what you're talking
Yeah.
about? Over by Tri-Cities, the parking lot, the trailhead to the Clackamas River Trail. I want to say I'm pretty sure that's on the list because Parks maintains it. Parks funding goes into that.
Yeah, and we
I will, let
we
me
built the trail.
check.
I think that's one that should get listed. Thank you.
Okay, Doug, do you have anything else to share for member report?
I was supposed to say something about pickleball. The one thing I think was very impressive is it had rained, and that surface is great. I mean, it is a good surface. You don't slide on it or anything else. I was really impressed by the quality of the surface. I wanted to mention that Commissioner Mingelberg also came out and participated. She was my partner. I think I got of all the teams that were working there, I got the worst score. So I wanted to take credit for that.
I think you won a trophy for that.
Well, I think the trophy actually went to him, not to me. But anyway, I wanted to say something that is actually not a Parks and Rec issue, but I wanted to pass these out. Greater Oregon City Watershed Council is having a fundraiser breakfast, and if you can come, it would be much appreciated. The Greater Oregon City Watershed Council has been involved in working in some of Oregon City's parks in terms of invasive removal, including Singer Creek Park and also Barkley Hills Park, and will continue to be so do so. So I just wanted to get that information out to you, and I think that's it for me.
At our last Oregon City Trails Alliance meeting, we had a pretty lengthy discussion about the tie-in to the Parks Foundation and to the Parks Committee. And one of the things that just to let you know, kind of our thinking, we want to become. We've been really distracted with the Newell Creek and other issues, but we want to become expert on the trails map. And in that, to really partner with the Parks Foundation and support the city parks and rec, and help publicize the trails and do those kinds of things. So I'm glad to see the kind of shift to more local. What can we do to help support that? And so, and then the Trail Alliance also received a grant for bike racks. So we're working through that process now. The only other thing about going back to Old Kanema Park, have any of you walked the trail in Old Kanema Park?
Mm-hmm.
Just a short distance.
Yeah. I don't know what the angle is on that trail, but it is, I mean, we got to the top of it and we were like ready to almost roll back a couple of times. It is incredibly steep. I tried it on a bike once. I couldn't make it. I had to get off my bike and walk it to the top. So it is really not a walkable pathway. And so for some future discussion, it might be worth thinking about ways to do some switchbacks in there because yeah.
Well, the city got funding for the design of the trail coming into Kanema, going over the for design purposes, and
I don't know how far in that design goes.
So it might be something that's looked at for that area. So
there was a couple there. We couldn't tell what language they were older. I'm getting old, but I mean, you know, they were probably in their 70s, and they late 70s. But they walked up and they took, and Suzette and I we headed up there, but halfway up we were about ready to come back, but we were determined we were going to make it up. And I'm not exaggerating. You have to go walk it yourself. But they said so they went back to their car. But I thought, well, it's kind of a shame because it's a neat little park and it'd be nice if we had a little more user-friendly pathway there. But and then just the last comment, you know, got lost. Speaking of history, get on your Google and look up Oregon Country. Not Oregon Territory, that came later, but Oregon Country, which went up all into Canada and then Oregon Territory. And it was interesting that Oregon Territory was split into the northern, which is now Washington, was called Clackamas, and the lower part was called Champouie, which is now Oregon. But just little things like that I got lost. It was like 2 a.m. and I'm still studying this, but a lot of great history.
Well, the Clackamas actually went all the way from the Molalla River all the way up to the northern part of what is now British Columbia, and all the way from the Willamette to the Continental Divide.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Well, and they were arguing. They argued because this is such great history because the English. I mean, it was a big battle between the English and you know, and they wanted the Canada to be at the Columbia River, and we said nope. We said we need Puget Sound, and if you don't give us the 49th parallel, we're just going to tell everybody to move west, and we're just going to overwhelm you with
that already was happening.
It was already happening, but they bought the thread, and they said, okay, 49th parallel's fine.
They didn't want a third war with us.
No. So there's your history lesson.
Could I come back to something? I wanted to mention the foundation applications. The presentation was made to the Natural Resource Committee regarding request for the invasive removal of water board, and the Natural Resource Committee heard it the day before the submission was to be made. The Natural Resource Committee did write a letter of support for that particular one. The Oregon City Watershed Council did too, but I didn't feel I could sign two of them, so the coordinator, and although we got it in to them that day, I don't think it was too late to get it in the packet, but in any case, we were very supportive of that project.
Trail Alliance jumped in on that as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Gosh, it's great we all work together.
Yep.
Okay, so, well, for my report, I was just thinking we haven't had a meeting since June, and all of those wonderful things that happened over the summer in our parks, the concerts in the parks that were hugely attended, the movies in the park that were always fun, and I hope some of you were able to go to those. Our Parks Day event, I think it was just a lot of fun, and the dentistry people that were sponsoring that night, bringing those blow-up beach balls that the kids were playing with in the park, and it was just a really nice atmosphere, and seeing people enjoy the parks. And talking about enjoying the parks, as I went into the library at 6:45 yesterday, and the dozen or so little kids that were playing on the equipment, and the parents there, and the squeals of delight as the kids are swinging on the swings and sliding on the slide, was really fun to watch. Just took a moment to stop and appreciate that. It does concern me that children too young to be on that slide, even though it's clearly marked for ages. The parents are right there, and so we need to find out. Hopefully, it's well enough signed so that if a 3-year-old falls from the top of the slide, when it clearly marked that they're not supposed to be on it, I hope the city is covered. I think we might need more signage to direct people with toddlers to the park across the street. And because some of them didn't, I pointed it out to one mother and she didn't know that it was there. She had come to the library, and so she wasn't familiar with the neighborhood. So, thinking of that. So, movies in the park, concerts in the park. So lots of things going on. There's the ballot measure again for the Wesley Land Park. So allowing the developer to build the road for access to the houses that are going to get built, which want to remind people does not eliminate the off-leash dog area. And so just make sure that you read your voter's pamphlet, and if you have questions, you can come to the Hillendale Neighborhood Association meeting, which is the first Tuesday of October, and we'd be happy to have a discussion at that time. We're planning on having a discussion then. So bring your questions to the Hillendale Neighborhood Association meeting, which will be at 7 o'clock, the first Tuesday of October. That meets at Living Hope Church, the corner of Gaffney Lane and Myers Road. There were a few of us that attended the boat ramp presentation, really blown away by the quality that was presented and the things that were said. There's still a lot of concern about the non-river impact, the upland impact on the park. So really looking forward to see that move forward in a positive way where everybody can make compromises and be happy with the final result. Any additional staff reports? Recreation update? Keep it quick. It's 9:05.
I'm going to say basically the recreation update I've handed you guys through email.
About the pool, what's going on?
The monthly update from June on, I believe it was. So you guys have that. The pool front office construction is underway, and so you'll see a new face to the pool when you come through. We'll have more of an ADA direct route into the natatorium, where you don't have to go through the locker rooms, and a new office space that is actually a productive office space. So that part is, we'll let you know when that's open so that you can come down and see the facelift and the more accessible route that's there. And let's see, Clackamas Park boat ramp update. The boat ramp is open. That's the highlight.
And so is the campground.
RV park.
RV park. That's right. We can't camp there.
And it's been predominantly full. Phil Lewis is our new community services director. He starts on Monday. He has Scott's old phone number, so if you guys want to get a hold of him, but plewis@orcity.org is his email. That's it for me.
I hope you weren't suggesting that when you said the office wasn't productive, you weren't getting any kind of indication as to the director of the swimming pool not being productive.
That they had been unproductive in the past.
They're highly productive, but now they can be a little more efficient with the space that they have.
Efficiency. That's what we like.
Clackamas Park Riverfront Master Plan update was on here, and we didn't
That
talk
was
about
the
that.
boat ramp.
Just the boat ramp.
It started out as the master plan update with the commission, transcended into the relocation with that meeting with OSMB. So the update was the OSMB open house.
Okay. Got it.
Okay, future agenda items. I think we've already talked about a couple of the things that are going to be the Vietnam Memorial Project is going to be at our October meeting, and
Falls Legacy Project will be
the
doing
Legacy
a
Project at
presentation
the
as well.
December meeting. And hopefully some interviews with applicants for our open and retiring positions.
Then your next scheduled meeting is October 27th. Right now it's scheduled at 7 p.m. However, I'll make an adjustment should you choose to do applicant interviews And so that would be a work session a little bit earlier. Other than that, that's all I have for you folks.
I just would make
Roger.
Oh, no, I was just gonna,
I did want to make a comment that we had discussed perhaps of having some things coming into a goal-setting session so the commission could hear that before they have their goal-setting session. We don't have too much time left this year, and we got a new director coming on, but maybe we can work that on at the very beginning of next year to actually have that session.
I can send you guys, I think you guys have your goals. I can send them out to you again, and at your October meeting, you and Phil can discuss
I'll go
timing.
back to my suggestion that we have the trails marked that connect collectors and major arterials, trails that actually go through parks and connect those roads, to have them named so that people know they're there.
Mhm. I have that on the future agenda items
Okay.
listing for Phil. However, that if you want to put that to the goal setting.
Right.
But again, I know that they're getting ready to set the budgeting goals and that sort of thing because we're coming into the next 2-year budget cycle. So coinciding your goal setting to the budget time frame probably be a good idea.
Does that mean we need to have that before the end of the year?
I would have that discussion with Phil. I'm not sure
Okay.
what the timing will be, but the directors are the
Right,
ones
it's-
that are included in those discussions.
Because we run on a fiscal year, so the budget runs through the end of June.
July to June 30th.
Right.
But
So
they're 2-year cycles, and typically we do our budget setting with the budget committee in April.
okay, all right. Thank you for bringing that to our radar.
I will not be present on the next meeting, at the next meeting.
I will
October
note.
27th.
I'm going to be in China.
Well, Skype us.
Yeah, there we go. Middle of the night.
Okay. At 9:11, I call this meeting closed.